Hi guys. So for this the first lesson that we're going to do is just reviewing some algebra skills as well as some right triangle trigonometry. I'll go through some examples, and what I recommend that you do, and I'll kind of cue you, is pause the video prior to watching the solution, just to get the practice. So I'll do like two examples, but again, you can pause for both, and then if you kind of get the gist, you can just move on. But so anyway, the first thing, we're going to break this into different videos that you can watch. The first one is just solving linear equations. So if we define what a linear equation is, it's when you have variables in the equation to the first power. So you're familiar with things like y equals 2x plus 3. So in this case, it's a linear equation because the x is to the first power, and it's also, in terms of y, it's also a linear because y is to the first power. So we'll see some examples where we have, depending on the variable that we're considering, it could be linear or quadratic. But in this case, we're just talking about variables to the first power. And then we have to talk about, what does it mean to actually solve? Well, when we say solve an equation, what that means is that we're just going to get a variable on one side. It doesn't mean that we're actually going to get a number. So like this equation here is solved for y because y is by itself. So that again is just solving the equation. And then finally, or second to last, solving an equation, we do that by using the inverse operations. So depending on what operation we have, like this is a plus 3, so we would subtract 3. This is times x, 2 times x, so we would divide. So we do inverse operations. We also do PEMDAS backwards. So your order of operations, multiply, divide, add, subtract. So instead of going this way, we go this way when we're solving. So we'll do any adding, subtracting first, then multiply, dividing, then exponents, and then parentheses. So remember, PEMDAS is backwards. And then your solution, like I said before, a lot of times it's just going to be a new equation, and that's fine. That's solved. All right, so let's, one second. Okay, so let's look at some examples. So in this first example, x plus 4 equals y minus 7. What I want to do is I want to solve for x. So I have it underlined. So to solve for x, I'm just going to look at this side. And remember the golden rule of algebra, whatever I do on one side, I have to do to the other side. So in this case, I have a plus 4 that I want to get rid of. So we'll go ahead and subtract 4 on this side. And since I did it on this side, I'm going to need to do it on the other side. And then we rewrite. So notice that I put the minus 4 under the number because these are like terms. And so we can, it makes it easier when we're putting stuff together. So here we would have x, and then 4 minus 4 is 0, so then nothing. The y comes down, and then negative 7 and negative 4 is negative 11. And that's our answer. X equals y minus 11. So now you try it, same equation, but now solve for y. Go and pause the video and do it. Okay, so we're solving for y, so we're working on this side of the equation. And I'm solving, so I want to get y by itself. So I would just move this 7. I'm using inverse operations. The opposite of minus 7 is plus 7. And we're going to do that on the other side, plus 7. Then we just bring everything down. So we get x plus 11 is equal to y. And negative 7 plus 7 is 0. Now notice that the y is over here. So it's solved, and this is fine. I will tell you that I normally will write whatever variable I solve for is going to be on the left. Just makes it easier to look at. Okay, so another example. So now a little bit more, a few more steps. So we have 3x minus 4 is 6y plus 8, and I want to solve for x. So again, we're working on this side of the equation because that's where my variable is. If I had an x over here, I'd have to gather them together, but so I want to get rid of this. I'm not going to switch colors. I think y'all can start to follow along. So I get plus 4, and we're going to add that on the other side, which leaves me 3x equals 6y plus 12. Now this, I still need to get x by itself. This is multiplication, so we're going to divide. And be careful when you divide. So when we divide or multiply, we have to do everything on the other side. So everything. So we're going to divide this by 3, and we're going to divide this by 3. Because what we're doing in reality is we're dividing the entire side of the equation by that number. Okay, so 3 divided by 3 is 1, which leaves x. 6 divided by 3 is 2, y. And 12 divided by 3 is 4. So there's my solution. So go ahead and pause the video and try this one. Now we're solving for y. Okay, so similarly, what we're going to do is we're going to work on this side, and we're just going to move stuff around. So again, adding, subtracting first. So I'm going to get rid of this plus 8 by subtracting 8. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So here, 3x minus 12 is 6y. Okay, I still have this 6, so I have not solved it. I have to get the y by itself, so we're going to divide by 6 all the way across. We divide everything. Okay, 3 divided by 6 is not 2, it is 1/2. X minus 12 divided by 6 is 2, equals 6 divided by 6 is 1, so we get y. And so that's our solution. We can rewrite it with the variable on the left, just because. And there we go. All right, the last 2 examples are dealing when you have fractions involved, because this one's just a little bit different. So in this one, I'm gonna work with the x, and since I have a fraction, sometimes I'll go ahead and just clear that out first, and then start working with it. So this kind of breaks the whole, PEMDAS backwards every time. Remember, it doesn't matter what order you do things as long as you follow algebraic rules, and following the order of operations is not necessarily a rule. We can solve equations as long as the steps are correct. So I'm actually going to multiply. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of this fraction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply that by the denominator, 3. So I'm going to multiply the entire equation, or both sides, however you want to think about it. 2/3 x plus 4/5 y equals 15. So I'm going to multiply through everything by 3. Because 3 times 2 is 6 over 3. So the 3's they cancel out. And what I'm left with is just 2x. And then 3 times 4 is 12 over 5, y, equals 3 times 15 is 45. See, so now this x, it looks a little cleaner, and it's a little easier. I've gotten rid of one fraction. I'm not worried about this one. We'll deal with that. Again, I'm solving for x, so we're going to move this. Now, this is what we can do is we can move this entire thing all together. We don't have to break it up. This is just some number, so I don't care. So we're going to subtract 12/5 y, and we'll do that on the other side. Now, why did I write it off to the side like this? Well, that way I know that I'm not combining these. These are not like terms. I can't put them together. So we're left with 2x is equal to 45 minus 12/5 y. Now finally, we'll just divide everything by 2. So we get x is equal to 45 over 2. What is that, 22.5? Minus, that's going to be 12/10 y. So typically in physics, what we'll do is we won't use fractions a lot. We'll typically get it into a decimal, but just for this review, it doesn't matter. This is just a matter of plugging in a calculator. So why don't you go ahead and try this one and do it for y. Go ahead and pause the video, solve for y. Okay, so now it's the same thing, except instead of multiplying by 3, because I don't care about this one, I care about this one. I'll multiply everything by 5. And you know what I'll do is I'll show you. Okay, so let me show you. No, it's okay. I'll just continue. So let's multiply everything by 5. I'm not going to rewrite it. I'm just going to do this. So we get 5 times 2 is 10 over 3x. That's 5 times 2 is 10. And then 5 times 4 is 20 over 5. But 20 over 5 is 4. So that's how they kind of cancel out. So let me erase that. Oops. So we get 4y equals 5 times 15. What is that? 75, I think. 15, 30, 45, 60, 75. Okay, so now we're solving for y, so we're going to move this term over. Minus 10 thirds x. So 4y equals 75 minus 10 thirds x. Divide everything by 4. And we get y equals 75 over 4, whatever that is a decimal, minus 10 twelfths x. And that's our solution. So that's it. So to recap, inverse operations, we want to get variables by themselves, and most likely we're going to end up with a new equation. So not necessarily a number, although sometimes you will. And then linear, of course, are just when the variable is to the first power.